we live and work and play on top of our drinking water supply.
I know. I have a well, and I love my well water, and I want to make sure that my well water stays.
But whether you have a private well or whether you use Suffolk County water, it's all from the same aquifer. So,
I know.
So even if you say you love your well, what I love about, and I don't have a well anymore because we're in an area that wouldn't let us have a well because there was some temic that was in the groundwater, which was part of what they used when they were growing potatoes. It was a pesticide that we know is a carcinogen. So a lot of areas in town were put on public water quite a while ago. Oh. And I live in one of those areas in Amagansett. But you know, the flip side of wanting your own well water is you don't have any chlorine in it.
I know.
And you know, we also know that chlorine can be a carcinogen.
Yes, especially when you shower in it.
So you also want to be, because it is volatile. So you know all the buzzwords. Then those are the things we want to guard against and for our own protection.
I look at those oak trees all around me because I have preserve around me, and I battle the leaves. I can't ever get my grounds really rid of those leaves. And I know that what that also means was that I was never farmed in my area. Yeah. And that's very, very good. I mean, maybe 200 years ago they might have been farming, but 200 years ago they didn't have pesticides. So we're safe, and therefore our groundwater is quite lovely.
Better, but you know, groundwater moves.
I know it does.
So you're always, you know, it's like a little underwater river.
Yes,
and so it does move.
And we do get it tested every now and again.
And that's why you should. And
yes.
It's a slow pace. It's not a raging kind of water that goes underneath, but it is moving.
Yes.
So that's why it's important not only to have where you are clean, but you want water percolating through other areas of town in clean instances as well.
And it seems as though New York State has also issued some new rules about phosphorus and putting that into...
Just recently, absolutely.
Yes, I know.
Good for you.
Well, I have a mentor. My mentor is the lady who produces this show. She keeps me abreast of everything going on. And by the way, I would ask her about the scavenger waste if I were you, because she's really up on it.
She's up on it. I know she is.
Yeah.
So, and
a trustee, I might add.
And a trustee, thank goodness.
Yes. So, and then another issue, which is certainly prominent, is our airport.
The airport issue is, the town board in December voted to take FAA money in order to redo a fence, a deer fence, that was their decision. I would have, and campaigned, that it would have been more appropriate to wait until 2014. Once we got the approval for the airport layout plan, which happened in 2011, we got the approval for it, then we could get a seasonal tower. And that seasonal tower could then be able to direct traffic into and out of the airport, including the helicopters, so which seemed to be the most egregious as far as noise is concerned. So if the one group says that the seasonal tower will take care of all the noise issues. And another group says, and I was one of those, that said, let's make sure that it does work before we obligate East Hampton to another 20 years of FAA regulations. And they decided not to go in that direction. So they did take the FAA funding, and you know, I am going to be waiting to make sure that this tower does work as promised by the Pilots Association.
Yes, well, I was at that meeting when it was discussed, and although I never could get close enough because it was overflowing, and the pilots certainly were organized and presented their point of view very, very strongly, to the point where you almost didn't get to really, there wasn't enough balance.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many of those pilots really lived around here and how many of them did not. So they don't even suffer any of the consequences. And another thing I also noted about was that all four of, including the two Democrats who have since left the board, voted for taking the FAA
All
money.
five, yeah, all five. It was a
Yes.
unanimous vote. Right?
Yes. And I was a little concerned with that. However, I did hear Pete Hamley say that, he had really studied the issue, but as an unemployed person, I'm sure it was to his benefit also to vote for passing of that rule, of taking the FAA money. He did point out that the Montauk Airport has been taking FAA money for a long time. And I just learned that the Montauk Airport is not owned by East Hampton.
No, it's private land.
That's very interesting,
Yeah.
I thought. It does put a little different
It's a little different spin, yeah.
Yes.
The two airports are not comparable to me in any way, shape, or form. They have, they don't look the same. They're not owned by the town. It's not a town facility. They don't have things around it that need to support the airport, industrial land around it that supports it. So it's a different, and it's a privately owned piece of property. So next to some Suffolk County owned property. But
Right.
yeah, so it's a different issue. I would say it's apples and oranges, if not, something just totally different animals completely.
So as a person who is perhaps has a different point of view than the majority of people on the town board, how do you work with them to, let's say, hope that they will understand some of the ideas that you might have about certain issues?
Well, that's going to certainly be a test all the way around to see if, it is the art of compromise in those positions. And so I do hope that there is that ability to be able, on both sides, to be able to understand that there were an awful lot of people in this past election that didn't agree with what was happening and what direction the town was taking, and which is one of the reasons I think that Peter and I got elected, and also that Zach came within 15 votes of being elected as supervisor. So, I hope that they take those things to heart, those numbers to heart, and say, okay, maybe my stance needs to be moving a little bit in this direction, and I might have to, compromise a little bit. I would like to have this happen, but if it happens this minus Y, it'll still be good for the town of East Hampton. And I believe in public hearings. I believe in the public showing up as often and as much as they possibly can in any forum that they can communicate with the town board. And I don't believe that this past town board really was as open as I would have liked to have them be to public comment, and listened to that public comment and acted accordingly. So, and sometimes I think that's one of the things that I learned in being a planning board member was I might walk into a situation and see an application and go, oh, no way is this going to happen. This is just, and then you begin to realize positions not only from the applicant's point of view, but maybe from your other board members' point of view that are, and so you grow and you learn. It's a terrible thing, I think, if you don't grow from the position that you're in and learn from the other people that are either on the board or out in the public. Because a lot of us can come to a situation with just very myopic viewpoint. And I think that's one of the things that I learned on the planning board was you can't always do that. There are other things you need to open your mind to.
Yes, I believe that Peter Van Scoyoc also talked about finding the areas on an issue where you do agree, and then building from that, and hopefully you can come to consensus about.
Yeah, well, he's very smart to say that. I wish that's said better than the way I just put it. So.
Well, I also told him about when I was an administrator and a teacher in public schools, that on both sides, I worked in groups where that's how we operated.
Yeah.
We tried to find what we agreed on, and hopefully that we could build from that. And actually it was called shared decision-making in those days. I don't know if they still do that kind of thing, but it's a good step.
Yeah.
And it is a way in which you can give a little bit,
Yeah.
and give a little bit there and a little bit, and then shape something that you can all live with. And that's very important if you're going to make progress.
And that's, I think part of it is you do want to make progress. So.
Yes, we need to take that into the United States Congress. You know, that's what they need to learn
I'm
too.
so glad I don't even have to think about that.
I keep saying they need to learn. They need to play basketball together and see how they can get along and realize that they are a team.
I think they, you know, and I can't think of the name of the book. It was a book about Lyndon Johnson, about how he was able to fight the good fight, but then everybody would go out for dinner together. So you had your ideology, but you also had your social
Well, that was in the days when Congress had to be they had to live there, and before they changed the rules about that, which was a big mistake, I think. Because
yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way.
they had to be there all the time. And so therefore they really did get to see each other and work together. And working together, maybe that's what we need to do, more dinners.
More dinners together, that's true, that's true.
Well, you know, lots of things are really solved over a nice plate of pasta.
I agree with you. It's a different atmosphere when you
Yes.
can just sit down and chat almost and make it much more social. You may listen better instead of having any kind of barrier up.
Well, you do. You build relationships,
Yeah.
and that's the important thing. And I know that you've got a lot on your plate, and I know you're going to work very hard because I know you, and I know how you listen and how you go after knowledge, because knowledge is
so important.
Yes.
Reading, I was reading the request for proposal for the scavenger waste plant. So I thought, even 2 months ago, I probably wouldn't have been reading this very uninteresting information, but it's so interesting in a lot of different ways. And I'm learning new language and to go along with it. So it's but that's, I like to learn. I like things never to be consistent.
Ah, my perfect pupil, a lifelong learner.
There we go.
That's what I like. Okay. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. We'll do it again.
Yes, indeed, we will.